What's a fact that barely anyone else knows? I don't think most people know the meaning of prodigal. They know the parable of the prodigal son and think it refers to someone that leaves and then has to come crawling back. But that's incorrect. Prodigal means to spend money lavishly or wastefully. The prodigal son was prodigal, whether or not he ever went back to his father. If hummingbirds don't eat within an hour, they might die from starvation. They feed from nectar every 15 to 20 minutes. The only exception to the rule is that at night, they get into a state called torpor, which is similar to the way bears hibernate. They do this every night. They lower their body temperature. Their heart rate goes down from like 1200 beats per minute to less than 100. And they shut down their kidneys, so they don't die from dehydration. Before being born, 2 of the 4 chambers of a baby's heart are not used. They are actually bypassed. There's no need to pump deoxygenated blood to the lungs when in the womb, because the lungs aren't breathing air yet, and so are not supplying oxygen. All the oxygen comes from the umbilical cord, so the 2 chambers responsible for sending blood to slash from the lungs are, largely, bypassed. There was a man, Angus Barbieri, who didn't eat for 382 days. He was morbidly obese and lived on tea, water, soda water and coffee while visiting the hospital weekly for vitamin and electrolyte treatments. He lost close to 280 pounds and broke his fast with an egg once he met his goal weight. The cigarette lighter was invented before the match. Sharks have been around longer than the rings of Saturn. Modern humans been around for about 200,000 years. Humans about 6 million. We were in a stone age for about 2.6 million years. We were not the first to use stone tools. There was another species, probably a close cousin, that used them about 700,000 years before the first human. Chimpanzees and some other animals are currently in a stone age. Dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago. Triceratops were probably the last species to die out. Grass didn't evolve until 66 million years ago. So only the last of the dinosaurs saw grass. Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops lived closer to us, 65 million years, than the Stegosaurus, 80 million years. I have more. I'm full of useless facts. Of all the US states, Maine is the closest to Africa. Seriously, look at a globe. Not just that flat oval map you saw in every classroom growing up. Africa is further north than you think, and Maine is further east than you think. People who are moments from their own death have an instinctual understanding that they are about to die. You can see it in their eyes, and they'll often be the ones to tell you. I had an aneurysm rupture in my brain. I knew I was dead and told a family member that I was going to die fairly quickly. I told her what to tell my grown child and my mother before I started to fade out. I knew when I laid down and closed my eyes it was for the last time. You just know it. Knowing that those last minutes and seconds were all the time I had left to love my child and my mother before an eternity of nothingness was a despair that felt bottomless. Words are insufficient. A surgeon cut my skull open and was able to clamp the artery and stop the inevitable. More than 50% of people with ruptured aneurysms die, and 70% of survivors experience brain damage. I was in the ICU and neurology unit for a month. There was no aha moment where I woke up and thought, I'm alive. You wake up in excruciating pain, with brain spasms, and experiencing the world like a wounded, angry animal. Barely sentient, not fun. The phrase "it's raining cats and dogs" comes from the era of thatched roofs. In the heat of the day, the dogs and cats would climb into the thatch to stay cool. If it rained particularly hard, it would make the straw slippery and they would slide out. The phrase specifically refers to very hard rain, hard enough to permeate the top layers and unseat the animals. Sarah Josepha Hale is the reason for the myth and celebration of Thanksgiving in the United States. She asked President Lincoln in 1863 to champion a holiday that would bring families together in the wake of the US Civil War. The goal was to get people back in each other's company to celebrate the nation. She then helped perpetuate a myth of the first Thanksgiving to remind the country of how the colonists persevered with the help of indigenous peoples. 7 years later, other federal holidays would officially be recognized throughout the country. Many species of shark have 7 senses, most notably the man-eaters. I despise that term. Tiger, bull, and great white In addition to the traditional 5, sharks also possess ampullae of Lorenzini, gel-filled pores on their snout. Think of the black freckles on a great white that detect electrical impulses such as spasmodic movement in water and ambient electrical fields. And the lateral line, a thin organ running down their sides, that acts as a magnetic detector, which allows a shark to orient itself in real time to the Earth's magnetic field, giving it a sense of direction akin to that of a bird. Great whites additionally are coated in denticles. Despite their smooth appearance, their skin is actually extremely rough and tooth-like. Think of sandpaper on some serious steroids. A great white bumping into you can actually peel layers off you like a potato peeler. That's if they don't give you a bite, of course. Onto that. Despite their fearsome reputation, great whites don't care for humans as a food source. They need immense amounts of blubbery fat and meat like whales and seals can provide. We are simply too lean for them to get much nutrition. Most attacks are down to either territory being defended or simple mistaken identity. They've got terrible eyesight, so a human on a boogie board looks exactly like a seal from below. And as they have no hands, biting is the only way they can be sure of something. It just sucks for us that's typically fatal. Finally, if you ever get a moment, look up spy hopping. Sharks can and will pop their heads above water to get a lay of the land. It's frightening to behold. The poem Ozymandias by Percy Shelley is based off a statue brought from Egypt by the French and passed on to the British. The very same statue is in the British Museum on full display. Another cool fact about that statue is all the damage done to it was done after it was discovered. They just had such a hard time moving it. The British accent is the one that changed after the US split from them, not the other way around. The average British accent lost its eroticism, while the American one retained it. An early 1700s British accent might have been closer to the modern American accent than the modern British one. This is also related to why accents from places like Boston or Savannah are non-Rhatic, as they kept close trading ties contact with British people after non-Rhatic speech took off there. A couple interesting science facts that lead to an interesting, likely somewhat obscure fact about an old kitchen appliance. Although I did learn this from a YouTube video which currently has 1.6 million views, so at least that many other people probably know it. When you cook something in boiling water, it always cooks at the boiling temperature of water, no matter how long it's in there. Once water begins to boil, any additional heat you apply goes to converting the water to steam. You can't actually get it any hotter. The hotter you make the fire, the faster it boils off. But the liquid water never gets above 212 F at sea level. If you heat a magnetic metal up, it will eventually lose its magnetism. If it's an actual magnet, you just permanently unmagnet it. If it's a normal piece of metal though, it will just lose the ability to stick to a magnet, and that property will return when it cools down. The exact temperature this happens at varies depending on the metal. Combine these facts together and you can make a nearly perfect automatic rice cooker. Basically, you take metal pot and put the appropriate ratio of rice and water in it and set it in the cooker. The cooker has a heating element of an own wattage that heats up and boils the water. The pot will sit right at the boiling temperature of water as long as liquid water remains, because the water will be absorbing all the excess energy to turn to steam. As long as you followed directions, the amount of time that water will take to boil off is very predictable with the fixed heating element. That will be the appropriate time to cook the matching amount of rice. Once the water has boiled off, the pot will quickly begin to heat up. Unchecked, this would quickly burn and ruin the rice. However, under the metal pot of the cooker is a button that is being pulled down by a spring, but is held against the pot by magnetism from an attached permanent magnet. The button is made from a metal that loses its magnetism just above the boiling point of water. Once all the water boils off, the pot starts to heat up and quickly damages the button, which gets pulled by the spring and automatically turns off the heat. Perfectly cooked rice through physics.